Well, thank you so much, Dr. Marc, or I should say, actually, Professor Marc, but I know that you go by Dr. Marc. I want to thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Dr. Marc Cohen is just one of the most incredible humans that you'll ever meet. And before I introduce Marc, I'd love to just also Therese Kerr, incredible brand ambassador who introduced Marc to Inner Origin. Dr. Marc and Therese Kerr are both on Inner Origin's Expert Product Advisory Board, do a phenomenal job there, curating products, the ultimate wellness edit for our customers and advocates to shop from at everyday prices or less, having those products delivered straight to their door. And Dr. Marc, for those of you who may not have seen Dr. Marc's bio, is probably the most accomplished person I've ever met in Australia and somewhat around the world, particularly in the area of blending, Western medicine with natural and alternative therapies. Dr. Marc was, known for introducing acupuncture, into emergency wards through Australia. He has done more research and clinical papers in Australia than any other doctor. He actually is a GP. He also has degrees in physiology, psychological medicine, PhDs in Chinese medicine and biomedical engineering. But he's passionate also in the areas of natural and alternative therapies. And I always say that to me, Marc is the peaceful bridge that it is between both industries. And he always gives evidence based in deep science, both based in medical deep science and natural alternatives. And as he talks to you, you'll understand that this man is just so informed, so researched, and something that is deeply passionate for him is the area of water. Marc will explain, but as we all know, water is one of our major life forces, if not the life force. And, the water that we're drinking every day is somewhat of a concern. And I know for Dr. Marc, this has been a particular area of, interest and study for him for a long time. And he's been very, very passionate about bringing a product to market that he believes can, take people's wellness to the next level. He's a professor, Australia's first professor of wellness, and you'll now understand why. So, Marc, I'd love to hand over to you to give you a little bit more about your background and then take us all into water.
Well, thank you, Sally. I'm just going to correct you. I haven't written more research papers than any other doctor.
Oh, haven't you? No, but you've done a lot.
Much more academic, but I've published more than 100 peer-reviewed papers, and I've written textbooks that are sort of foundation textbooks for the spa industry, but also for naturopathy and natural medicine, herbs and supplements. And I've written books on natural remedies for Reader's Digest, and so I've done a lot, but not more than any other doctor. So
amazing! There you go. I knew you'd published over 100, which is huge.
Yeah, over 100 original peer-reviewed articles, and I'm still producing more, which is great. So I still love the research world. And as you say, I've been involved with wellness since I started medicine. I started medicine in 1982. And at that time, I went into medicine because I wanted to learn how to be well, not because I wanted to help sick people. And that was a really strategic decision for me, because I said, how am I going to have the happiest and healthiest and most fulfilled life? And I thought I could do that by studying medicine, because that would teach me about life and death and everything in between. And I had this convoluted, academic path where I did a Western medical degree. I took years off to do an honours degree in physiology and psychology, and then a PhD in Chinese medicine, and then came back and finished Western medicine, did a PhD in electrical computer systems engineering, and then got involved with lifestyle interventions, and I headed up a complementary medicine centre at Monash University for 10 years, where I was like the alternative doctor amongst all the conventional Western doctors. And then I was given a professorship, a tenured professorship at RMIT University, where I was a conventional doctor amongst all the alternative doctors. So I was head of a department that taught chiropractic, osteopathy, Chinese medicine, but no Western medicine. So that was a really nice way to be a bridge there. And at that time, I got involved with the spa industry and with the wellness resort industry. And I've been, for 16 years, I was a professor at RMIT until the end of last year, where I had a life change and said I can do, I want to keep up doing research, but rather than just teach, osteo-chiro Chinese medicine students and doing stuff in the university, I want to do stuff in the philanthropic world and the commercial world to really make a difference. But throughout my academic career, I've been really focusing on lifestyle interventions and how to reduce toxicity. And I've done research on organic food. I've been a spokesperson for Australia Organics, and about 10 years ago, we published research that showed a 90%, well, actually an 80% organic diet. So you eat 80% organic food for a week, you reduce your pesticide load by 90%. We measured urinary pesticides, and I've done work at health retreats showing that if you go to a health retreat eating organic food, you reduce your pesticide load and you drop weight, and you're happier and healthier and slimmer and less symptomatic. And throughout this time talking about toxicity, I've written an article which is in the notes for everybody on the 10 toxic truths. It was in Organic Gardener a few years ago, which outlines the scientific basis of toxicity. And I gave that lecture for many years, about 3 or 4 years, in the circuit for doctors and naturopaths. And it was so depressing to give this lecture because it goes through what we know and the the non-controversial scientific knowledge of how toxic the world is. And it's a really depressing lecture to give because everything's so toxic nowadays. And people would come up to me and say, so what do we do about it? And, you know, I've had a saying for a long time, you know, I think eating less poison is good for you and drinking less poison is good for you. And people say, yeah, well, that makes sense. And I've been trying to do research to demonstrate that. And one of the other, and then people come to me, and I always start with water. I've been, you know, talking about water, and I love bathing, and I've created the Bathe the World Foundation, which I'll talk a bit about later on. But when talking about water and bathing, people ask me, what's the best water filter to buy? And one of my PhD students is Nicole Bousma. Now, Nicole is the founder of the building biology industry in Australia. So she's my student as a PhD student. She's also my teacher about building biology. And we've had long discussions about what's the best water filter to buy. And the answer has always been, it's really complicated. It depends on the water you start with. It depends on what you want to get out of the water and how you're going to use the water. And I would tell people that, and they'd say to me, oh, Mark, you know, if you can't work it out, how are we supposed to work it out? So then I came up with some principles, and working with Inner Origin and with Therese also prompted me to do this, to say, you know, where's the best water filter? And I said, okay, if I was going to have the best water filter, what would it do? And for me, it needed to get rid of all the nasty toxic chemicals. And I'll go through, there's at least, you know, 10 classes of nasty toxic chemicals in water. So I want to get rid of all those toxic chemicals and agents, but also at a volume that you could bathe in it. Because I don't think, if you think about the water you use in your home, you're exposed to 10 times as much water through bathing than you are through drinking. You might drink, you know, maybe 1 or 2, at maybe maximum 3 litres a day, but you'll bathe in 200 litres a day. You know, a bath, it holds about 180 litres, a shower, you know, 5-minute shower, you know, easily 150 litres, 200 litres. And when you're bathing, the water is at a high temperature, which means chlorine is volatile, and there are other volatile organic compounds in water as well that get aerosolized and in a vapor because they're volatile, and you breathe them in through your lungs, and your lungs have a surface area the size of a tennis court, and you also absorb them through your skin. And so for me, you know, I want to bathe in clean water, and that was really paramount. And so I had to have a good volume. So I had to be able to do the whole house, and it had to be really robust. I didn't want to have plastic elements in it. It had to be, you know, the highest quality possible. And it was, I have this gift. I really think my life is charmed and blessed. I have guardian angels looking after me, whatever it is, because I was talking to a lot of water manufacturers and water resellers and wholesalers, and I met these water wholesalers, filter wholesalers at the right time. They'd just come from a massive water filter conference in Shanghai, and they were talking about this. There's a new Russian technology, and it uses a thing called ecopolymers. And these ecopolymers, and they actually have there's many patents that govern the use of these ecopolymers, and they're these polymers where they can control the pore size, the little gaps, the little holes inside the polymer. And they can coat the polymer with these ion exchange resins and with silver. So what that does, it forces water to go through this huge giant maze. And when water does that, the water gets, first of all, it gets charged, and any particles in that water get absorbed. Viruses and bacteria get zapped by the electrical charge on the edge of the polymer. The pressure increases when the water goes through the filter, and when it comes out, the pressure reduces, and that relieves a lot of dissolved carbon dioxide and it removes other acids in the water. So the water is naturally alkalinized by these filters. The water is also naturally softened by these filters without removing the calcium or magnesium. And the way it does that is calcite crystals are normally quite large, and that's the calcium crystals that cause hardness and scale. But when it goes through these filters, the charge and the pressure dissolves the calcite, and when it recrystallizes, it crystallizes in a form that's very, very small called aragonite. And that aragonite doesn't form scales, and it actually can help dissolve scale. So these filters remove the nasties, they alkalinize the water, and they dissolve the scale. And they do it at a volume which you can have 50 litres per minute. And 50 litres per minute is enough to have your whole house filtered with 3 showers and the kitchen tap all going at the same time. So that was, it was just a boon that I was in the right place at the right time. So we sourced the filter cartridges, and we had to then source the best canisters. So we used stainless steel canisters and then the pre-sediment filters. And we put this system together, and there is nothing like it on the market at the moment to filter a whole house. So there's other solutions. Like we understand not everyone can do the whole house, although that is the ideal, because as I say, bathing in clean water is so important, and I'll elaborate on that in a little bit. But there is an option to have an under sink filter, and rather than having an extra tap, so you have to drill a hole and have an extra tap in your sink, this can filter, because it's got such a large capacity, all the water that goes through your kitchen sink, both the hot and the cold water, which means at least you can cook and drink and rinse your vegetables in clean water. And then there is another option if you want it really portable for your caravan or something, where you can just screw it onto the tap. It doesn't need any special fittings, and that's the countertop system. There are these 3 systems, keeping it very simple, that have the same patented Russian filter technology, and will remove the nasties. And I want to talk a bit about the nasties, because in researching I talk about the principles in the 10 Toxic Truth article. If you think about, and in fact, I've been talking to people, drinking less poison is good for you. And they say, yeah, but there's no poison in our water. I say, well, yes, there is. And it's put there intentionally. It's called chlorine. And the reason why they use chlorine in drinking water is because chlorine's a really effective poison. So they use it because it is a poison, and they want to kill bacteria at the point of use, which means the municipalities put chlorine in water, and for good reason. I mean, cholera and typhoid outbreaks can be devastating, and they have been devastating in the past as public health issues. So it's important to control pathogens, and if you're a city governor or mayor or in charge of water systems, you don't want to have a public health outbreak. So it's important to kill pathogens. Mind you, chlorine doesn't kill all pathogens. It doesn't kill viruses like hepatitis A. It won't kill spores of Cryptosporidium or Giardia, which can also be public health crises, epidemics, and that has been in the past, epidemics, outbreaks. So there are issues with chlorine. And in fact, if you look at the history of chlorine was first used in the First World War to kill humans. And if you read accounts of the First World War, chlorine gas was used. It's a yellow, dense gas that creeps along the ground and affects the eyes and your respiratory system, and it's the most horrible death. So it was designed, it's a war chemical, it was designed to kill humans, and then it was adapted to kill bacteria. And if you think about what we do to bacteria, so we use chlorine in our water, we use disinfectants on our surfaces, we use pesticides in our soil, we use antibiotics on in our bodies. We've created literally a war on bacteria for the last 100 years. And it's only in the last 10 years we've realised that bacteria are actually our friends. In fact, they are us. 90% of our genetic information isn't human information, it's bacterial information. And there's at least as many bacterial cells in our body as human cells. So in a very real sense, bacteria form who we are. And we now understand that the bacteria in our gut control our thoughts, our moods, our diet, our appetites, what sort of foods we want to eat, who we want to be with. And they also form the barrier between our gut, which is the outside world, and our inside world. And dysbiosis, overgrowth of abnormal bacteria, and leaky gut is also caused by dysbiosis, is one of the roots of inflammatory disease. And there was a great article, actually, I'll share the link. There was an article, I put it out on Facebook last week. It was written at the start of this year by a researcher at the Murdoch Children's Research Institute, who talked about the effect of chlorine on the gut microbiome. And surprisingly, it's never been studied. There are no research studies on the human gut microbiome and the effect of chlorinated drinking water. There are studies, however, of chlorinated drinking water in rats and laboratory animals, and it really disrupts their gut microbiome and causes illness in animals. And there was a lot of studies on the effect of chlorine in the microbiome of drinking water, because water doesn't want to be sterile. Water is almost never sterile. So even if you put chlorine in drinking water, it won't sterilize it. It would change the flora, the ecosystem within that. So it will mainly kill E. coli. But as I say, viruses stay, there are spores that will stay, and other things stay. So there's a lot of research on that, but we don't really understand what the effect is on our gut. But if you think about the gut bacteria in your stomach as being really important for your health, but also there's bacteria on our skin that's really important for our health. In fact, that bacteria in our skin is our first line of defense against the outside world. And if you're using chlorinated water to bathe in and to drink, it's like you're waging war on your allies, the bacteria on your skin and in your gut. And eventually that breaks down. So anyone, if you have a skin condition, if you have a respiratory condition, if you have any gut condition, the obvious thing to do is stop drinking poison, stop putting poison on your skin. And in fact, just doing that can be a really effective health intervention. So, yeah, so just finishing the discussion about chlorine. Yeah, chlorine's a great poison. It's important to sanitize water. You don't want to have public health issues, but then you want to remove the chlorine before you bathe in it or drink it. And the way to do that is actually filtration. And filters now are really, they're really important because the level of not just chlorine in our water, and with chlorine, there's free chlorine and there's chloramines, or these trihalomethane and other organic chlorine compounds, which DDT is an organic chlorine compound. A lot of pesticides are organochlorines. The original pesticides that were talked about in the Silent Spring in the 1960s were organochlorines like DDT, and they're really toxic to life. So chlorine, free chlorine and the organochlorines and organic chlorine compounds, you want to get rid of them. You don't want to be exposed to them. And people may think, or you probably have first-hand experience. If you walk into an indoor swimming centre and the air's warm and there's chlorine in the air, you can, if you're sensitive, you'll feel the mucous membranes in your eyes and in your nose and your lungs have an immediate reaction. And then eventually you sort of adapt to it. And some people may even like that smell because it brings them back to their childhood when they went to swimming lessons, but it's actually not a healthy thing. And especially when chlorine's in the air, it's really not good. So chlorine and chloramines, you want to get rid of them. The other really important things to get rid of are the biological hazards, the pathogens. So you want to get rid of bacteria and viruses. Also mold spores and other protozoans and worms and mold and all those other things you want to get rid of. So it's super important to get rid of the chlorine, the chloramines, and the chlorine and chloramines help get rid of the biological pathogens, although, as I said, not all of them. Then you want to get rid of heavy metals and radioactive elements because they're really toxic. And the amount of lead and mercury in our water, just from contamination from diesel exhaust and from coal-fired power stations, etc., that settles down in our water. So they're really important to get rid of because heavy metals, radioactive elements, they replace other agents in our body and they stay in our body. It's very hard to expel them out of our body. So it's really important to get rid of those. The other thing is the volatile organic compounds and sediment. So volatile organic compounds give water its odor and flavor, and water shouldn't have an odor and flavor. And often they're caused by petrochemicals or a whole lot of other different pollutants can be volatile. So you want to get rid of volatile organic compounds, and then sediments, just like rust and both colloidal and non-colloidal. Rust is really important, but any other sediment has to be, you want to get rid of. And then finally, there's a whole range of residues. There's pesticide residues, there's fire retardant residues, there's pharmaceutical drug residues that are now entering our water supply. And there are whole populations that are exposed through the oral contraceptive pill and antidepressants that end up going into the water supply and affect us. Not to mention, as I say, fire retardants and pesticide residues. And then you've got pollutants. And the pollutants are, so the pesticides, fire retardants and pharmaceuticals are things that we make intentionally. There's a whole lot of stuff we make unintentionally when we burn fossil fuels and when we have solvents and discharge from factories and just pollution that gets into our water cycle. And this is in the global water cycle. They've done studies, for example, all over the world. And one of the tissue samples they most commonly sample is human breast milk. And that's because human breast milk, it's fatty and it's easy to retain, and it gives a concentrated form, because otherwise it's hard to get fat samples out of the body. But they've taken breast milk samples, for example, from women in the New Guinea highlands. And these are women who live at 2,000 meters elevation, so they're high up, and they're 2,000 kilometers away from any agriculture, and they have DDT in their breast milk. And that's because DDT, it's an organochlorine, has entered the global water cycle. It's a thing called long-range environmental transport, and it's transported across the whole planet. It gets into the water cycle. So there's really no water on Earth that remains unpolluted. And it's polluted with poisons, and if you want to be healthy, it's good not to drink or bathe in poison. So the case for having using a filter is pretty solid. And then it comes down to the terms of which filter do you want to use. And when I sort of developed my criteria, I wanted to have one that, as I say, I could bathe in clean water. I mean, now you can get KDF shower filters just for your shower, and then a filter for your drinking, but it's not ideal. That's a good solution. But really, you want to get rid of all, will filter all the water in your home, and that's now possible with these, high-level filters. And if you think about, the cost and the amount of water you're exposed to, and the potential benefits, and this is something that, I'm really keen to explore. So I've spoken to a lot of, I've done research on the microbiome, and I've spoken to a lot of, molecular biologists who are experts on this. And I asked them, what do you think the effect of chlorine on our gut microbiome is? And they said, well, it has to have an effect. We're sure it has an effect. It's just never been studied. So with these filters, there's an opportunity to study that. And I've got a relationship now with Microba. It's an Australian company based in Brisbane who do microbiome testing. And it costs $350. And they can send you on the post a sample kit. And with that sample, it's just like doing the fecal occult blood stool testing. You just get a bit of used toilet paper and just put a little swab from that into a cotton bud and put that in a package and send it off. And they'll analyze all the bacteria in your gut. You can also take swabs of your skin, and they'll do it on your skin as well. So a microbiome analysis can be done before you start using a filter, and probably 6 weeks, 8 weeks after you've used the filter. And we can start documenting the change in the microbiome, but also I've developed a questionnaire, a survey, where you can document your health symptoms and the frequency and severity of a whole range of different symptoms that you can look at before and after to see what are the actual health benefits and the changes to our bacteria from drinking and bathing in clean water. So I think that's really important. To be able to contribute to knowledge. And one of the other principles I had when I, because now this is me going to the commercial world, and in fact, these filters are really my first products. I've got lots of books, and last year I've written textbooks and, as I say, books on natural medicine, but last year I came out with my first children's book, which is available on the InOrigin platform, I'm happy to say. But, books are one thing, but in terms of products, filters are my first product. And if people have heard me speak, I often talk about the 5 Bs and how to get rid of toxicity. by clearing your bladder, your bowels, your breath, your body, and your brain. And the first thing I talk about is your bladder, and to filter and flush your bladder. So filter the water that comes in, and get stuff coming out by drinking Tulsi tea and good beverages. So it's really nice that my first product I'm coming out with are water filters, and I put in the links some of the talks I've given on water in the past. So I've been so passionate about water my whole life, and now I'm talking about it on the global stage. And one of my criteria was having a filter that can filter bathing water, and I'm very passionate about bathing. And I'm a shareholder of a hot springs in New Zealand, Maria Hot Springs, which has the most pristine water I've ever experienced. So none of that is chlorinated. So there's pure water coming down from the mountains, and there's hot water coming up through the earth. And this is sort of the place where heaven and earth meet. And that's amazing hot spring location. And you go there for 10 days and you're drinking the water and bathing in it, and you just feel incredible. But how can you do that at home? Again, having a quality filter will help that. But in terms of the bathing, 2 years ago, I joined with Therese Kerr. Thank you, Therese, and some other colleagues of mine, Ingo Schwader, who's a global spa consultant who's built spas and hot springs all over the world. Charles Davidson, who's the owner and founder of the Peninsula Hot Springs. We created the Bathe the World Foundation. And this was, when I really looked at my career, I've been a doctor for 30 years. I've taught a lot of medical students. I've taught a lot of, chiro, osteo, Chinese medicine students. I've published 100 research papers. But what is really the impact on the world? And, and how could I have a bigger impact? And all my research has led me to the conclusion that the most powerful thing you can do, the cheapest and the most powerful intervention you can do to anyone, is to give them access to clean flowing water. That's the simplest and cheapest intervention. And that includes people in the first world. So if you're drinking poisoned water and bathing in poisoned water, before I start giving you probiotics and nutraceuticals and different drugs, let's just take the poison out of your water, give you access to clean flowing water. It's a super cheap and super effective health intervention. And then you've got the people, and there's currently 1 in 3 people on Earth that don't have access to clean flowing water. There's nearly 1 billion people who don't have access to drinking water, and 2.4 billion people who don't have access to clean bathing water. And for these people, clean water changes their life. About 1,000 children die every single day because of water contamination. And mainly women and girls spend 200 million hours every single day to fetch water. And UNICEF write about this. I'll put a link in the chat if you like. But they say that it's like a woman started walking in the Stone Age and just arrived into the modern world carrying water. That's 200 million hours. And that's the time spent every day for women and girls just to fetch water. So providing clean water to these people is totally life-changing. And through the Bathe the World Foundation, we're able to do that. And the way we do that, we've partnered with a company called F Cubed. Now, F Cubed is a company set up by the guy who started the Reject Shop, who passed away now, but he developed this technology. And it's very simple. It's like a solar still. It's a big solar panel, and you put 5 panels together, and you put in any contaminated water, seawater, saline well water. And apparently all over the world, governments and the World Health Organization have dug wells for people, but the water comes out too saline to drink or to use. So you can put that contaminated water into a solar panel, and then the sun evaporates the water off and collects the distilled water. And one of these systems, a 5-panel system, costs about $4,000. And that 5-panel system will provide 100 litres of water per day for 25 years, plus rain catchment. So the panels can also be used to catch rain. So it's at least 100 litres a day for 25 years from a $4,000 investment. And again, when I went into the commercial world and giving people access to clean water through the filters, I really wanted to make a difference. So I've said 10% of the retail price So 10% of sales will go to the Bathe the World Foundation. People said, how can you do that? That's too much. Maybe 10% of profits. No, that's all. No, and I really believe that giving people access to filters, for one, that affects their life, but then knowing that when they buy the filter, they're giving access to clean water to families who's going to totally transform their lives. There's a really good feeling that generates from that that's going to increase the popularity of these filters and really make a difference in the world. So that's my contribution back to the world, but everyone else can be part of that contribution of giving. And the equivalent, and I'm sort of doing the statistics on this, and it's roughly, the price of a whole house system will deliver around about 50,000 litres plus rainwater to a family. And 50,000 litres is pretty much, if you've got a family of 4 people drinking 3 litres per day, it's drinking water for 10 years. So if you buy a whole home system, you're giving drinking water for 10 years to a family. Mind you, it's in these solar panels, it's going to last 25 years. So I think that's a really significant contribution that I can make, and through Origin can make, and everyone can be part of this contribution. And I'm really proud, and I'm happy to be talking about that, and to be involved in an ecosystem that's really supporting clean water, not just for the wealthy, but for everybody. So I can see a lot of comments, although I've just got my glasses.
Yeah, Mark, thank you. Just absolutely incredible information. There's a few questions for you in the chat box. Are you able to access them, or do you want me to read them out?
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. Okay, and one question I've had a lot is, what about fluoride? So I want to talk about fluoride, and because the filters, this filter technology, the eco-polymer technology, doesn't remove all the fluoride. And some people say that's a bad thing, but and a few people said even fluoride's the main concern. But as I say, there are at least 10 things more toxic than fluoride you need to be concerned about that it does remove. So chlorine and chloramines, bacteria and viruses and pathogens, sediment and volatile organic compounds, heavy metals, radioactive particles, and residues from pesticides, fire retardants, and pollutants are all more toxic than fluoride. I'm working with a company that produces these filters. There is a technology, it's an activated aluminium technology that can remove fluoride at a high flow rate. They're quite expensive, but we're looking to bring out a cartridge that's a special fluoride cartridge, maybe by the end of the year. The only other way to get rid of fluoride is reverse osmosis. And reverse osmosis is far too slow to be able to have it for your bathing water. So people are really concerned with fluoride. They can do a whole house system and bathe in clean water and then get a fluoride extraction from their sink. But yeah, fluoride is, at very high levels, fluoride is a neurotoxin, and in places in India, fluorosis is an important toxin they have to remove. In fact, tulsi leaves can this research saying using tulsi leaves can reduce fluoride in water. But yeah, so fluoride is an issue. So yeah, people ask, what's the difference between a reverse osmosis filter and the extreme wellness filters? Well, reverse osmosis is a very slow process. So you need to have a tank, of water that stores the water, or you've got to wait 5 minutes, a minute or more to get a glass of water out of reverse osmosis. These filters, we're using the eco-polymer technology. You can have 4 showers going and the kitchen tap all flowing at the same time, all delivering clean water. So reverse osmosis is not practical for bathing water. And as I've said, you get exposed to more toxicity through bathing because you're exposed to more water through bathing than through drinking. People ask, does it remineralize? Well, it doesn't remove the minerals. It removes the toxic agents, the calcium and the magnesium. The minerals are still there, although they're in a different form. So they're in a form called aragonite. So it's actually a descaling form. They call it quasi-softening. Normally softening water can be quite an expensive process depending on where you are. And I know there's a lot of people in Kalgoorlie and in the Western Australia where the water can be very hard. So these filters will soften the water, but without removing the minerals. Now, there are other systems, which again, I'm looking to maybe add another cartridge, which adds like coral minerals, often magnesium and calcium, which help they're alkalinizing minerals. so you can actually add that back. But that's, first of all, you've got to get rid of the toxic stuff. And that's one of the issues I have. There are other filters on the market that alkalinize water, but they don't remove the toxic stuff. But that's just, putting icing on a mud cake. You still got the toxic stuff there. The water's alkaline, but that doesn't make a huge difference, because when water hits your stomach's got a pH of 1, and the pH will change anyway. Question: there are 2 components replacements for the whole house. Do they both need to be replaced every year? Well, it really depends on the water that you're starting with. The pre-sediment filter, which is very cheap to replace, or much cheaper to replace, that sort of protects the ion exchange ecopolymer filter, which also has a carbon block in it as well. So it uses multiple technologies. It uses ion exchange, it uses carbon block filtration and absorption. So if you've got a lot of sediment, you might have to replace the sediment filter more frequently. And you'll know when the big filter needs replacing, because the water will actually start to slow down. Or you can get a very simple chlorine test from a pool shop. And if you detect chlorine in your water, your filter needs replacement. However, these systems actually have a very long life. The under sink system, 150,000 litres for the under sink one. If you think about how much water goes through your sink tap, maybe 10 litres a day, maybe 20, even if it was 20 litres a day, 150,000 litres, it's going to last you, maybe 5 years. Now, it does depend on the sediment and the water you're starting with. So it's really hard to give an overall answer, because, Australia is such a big country and people are starting with different qualities of water. These filters are suitable for bore water. They're suitable for hot or cold water. They're suitable for tank water. So it's not just town water. You can filter, and they do remove all pathogens, which is super important. All viruses, all bacteria, mold, spores, etc. There's a question about, do they alkalinize the water? They do, but it's not electric alkalinizing. It's a natural alkalinizing, because you're removing some of the acid particles in the water, or the acid forming minerals. Not even minerals, the carbonic acid, the carbon dioxide you're removing, and some of the just toxic elements cause acid. So that is a natural alkalinizing effect. The activated aluminium, these filters do not have activated aluminium, but activated aluminium is a way to remove fluoride. But yeah, aluminium is not so great. So I'm looking into a way to remove the fluoride. But other than fluoride, these filters remove all the nasty stuff. Question: what does the whole house system connect to? So the whole house system, you just find where your water meter is, and there'll be a water main that comes into your house. And you just locate that, preferably before it goes off to your hot water system, and you cut that line. If you know about plumbing, you can do it yourself, but these filters are NSF and Watermark certified, so they're used for main pressure. The stainless steel canisters, and in fact, I can't offer it right now, but I'm talking to get sort of the legal wording right. But I'm hoping to be able to offer a lifetime guarantee on these filters, the canisters at least, because they're so robust. It's marine grade stainless steel canisters that are super robust. So basically, when the water comes into your house, you just take that, cut the line out, put one into the start of the filter, one comes out of the filter, and that's it. And to replace the cartridges, then it's just there's a spanner that comes with it. You can then replace the cartridge. So Kieran's question about replacing the whole house filters. We say every 12 months. Some may last a lot longer than that. If you're really in a high sediment area, it might be shorter than that, but recommended 12 months as a general rule of thumb. The replacement filters are available through Inner Origin. I don't know if they're up on the website yet. Let me find the prices for you. I think the replacement filter cartridge for the sediment filter is $62.50. For the whole house, the expensive one, the ion exchange carbon block replacement cartridge, is $585. So that's the biggest expense. Under sink one is $315 replacement, and the countertop one's $101.25 a replacement. Okay, there's a question in regards to the whole house. Once the water has passed through the filtration system, is there a maximum pipeline meter length from the filter to first or last fixture? No. Once you've connected the filter to your mains, then the mains will just go and supply all the different taps and outlets in your home. Yeah, there's no maximum or minimum. I'm just trying to see if I have any questions here that I haven't answered. So hopefully I've answered about the reverse osmosis. We have a filter in a refrigerator. Would that be removing any of these poisons? Well, a fridge filter, often that'll be carbon, activated carbon. I'm not sure what it is. It probably removes some of the free chlorine. To remove some of the organochlorines is more difficult, and it probably won't remove heavy metals or radioactive particles and pesticide and other, fire retardant and pharmaceutical residues. Question, does the water remain safe in the pipeline if the water is not being used, or if it's recommended to let water run so that new water has only just passed through the filter and is being used? Well, that's a great question. It does depend on your pipes. And again, it's really hard to give an overall answer. But if you've got a home with, an old home with galvanized pipes, there still might be lead solder in some of these galvanized pipes, which can be an issue. But generally, water that's in the pipeline isn't going to absorb a lot of toxic substances compared to what's put in the water before it hits your home. They intentionally put in poison in the water system for, chlorine for removing pathogens, which is, it's good to remove pathogens, but you want to get rid of the chlorine before it hits your home. And then if you think about the antiquated water systems, because in a lot of towns, municipalities, there are still galvanized iron pipes in the mains that have lead solder. So they can be having lead. There's all sorts of sediment and rust and biofilm. So it's really, as I say, water doesn't want to be sterile. So there's always organisms there that forms a biofilm that it's really hard to eradicate. So often they have to use high doses of chlorine. Also, it depends on where you are in the distribution system. If you're closer to where they chlorinate the water, you're going to get a much higher dose if you're at the end of the line. Can I recommend unrefined salt for the filtered water for drinking? Well, yeah, you can certainly add a pinch of salt if you want to have minerals. So again, depends on your diet and why you want the minerals. But these filters don't remove the minerals; they'll remove the toxic agents. So the main benefit of this system really is that it's high flow, high volume, so you can filter your bathing water, and that's super important. I think people don't realise that that the importance of not just drinking, but you're exposed to more water through bathing. And our body, I've given some links to some talks I've given. We're 99% water. If you count the molecules in your body, 99 out of every 100 molecules in your body are water molecules. It's just the water's tiny compared to all the other big biological molecules of, protein and collagen and DNA, etc. So water is the basic infrastructure of our body. And once you get the infrastructure right, everything else just flows well. So it's so important to get that right. Therese asked about the hydration capabilities of RO system. I'm not concerned about that. RO systems will remove everything. And then you've sort of got this still water that's, you may want to remineralize, which helps with the hydration. I'm also really a big fan of structured water. 2 years ago, I was privileged to be invited to speak at the International Conference on the Physics, Chemistry and Biology of Water. And this is a conference that's held every year by Gerald Pollack. He convenes the conference. He's written a great book. In fact, I'll put his TED Talk on the link called the fourth phase of water. But yeah, I spoke at this conference, and Gerald Pollack was talking about how we're 99% water, but when we study biochemistry and pharmacology, we focus on the 1%. We focus on all the other molecules that aren't water, where water is, so important for who we are and what we are. We're 2/3 water by volume or mass, but we're 99% by molecules. So, you need to get that right. So here's a link. So there's a great link there. Oh, how do I want to type it to everybody. And there's a lot we don't understand about water. There are 72 scientific anomalies that we don't understand about water. So there's a lot we have to learn about water. It's still, there's so much that, once we discover more about water, we're going to learn about ourselves because we are water. But one of the things that I'm just certain about is drinking less poison is good for you. Bathing in less poison is good for you. And these filters are the ones I've found that will enable that in the most simple, cost-effective, robust way that you can do it for your whole family.
I think, Mark, one of your other sayings that I absolutely love is if you don't use a filter, you are one.
Absolutely. And it's sort of obvious when you say it. Like, if you don't use a filter, your body will filter out all the stuff and it stays in you. So yeah, there's, if you don't use a filter, you're going to be one. And,
we want
what would you rather have? Would you rather have, a filter filter your house water and then you can replace it and discard it, or you can have your kidneys do it, and all that toxic stuff's going to stay in your kidneys and in your body. So a question about if your house has copper or plastic pipes, yeah, it may be good to run the water a little bit. If you're coming back to a holiday house and the house has been there for a couple of weeks and the water's sitting in the pipe, it may actually leach something from your pipes. But again, that's going to be way less than it's leached from the municipal water system that's got to your house. But yeah, it's good to keep the water running. In nature, healthy water systems, where water is clear and flowing, you have a healthy ecosystem and a healthy water system. When water is stagnant and polluted, that's when you have problems. And unfortunately, there was a saying in public health for many years that the solution to pollution is dilution. And that was the public health sort of approach. And it so basically says, if you can't get rid of pollutants, what do? You dilute them in the atmosphere, you dilute them in the oceans. So, and that's what we've done. We've pumped pollutants into our oceans and we've pumped it into the atmosphere. But we've come to the limits of that. And now we have this long-range environmental transport where the pollutions come back to haunt us, and it's coming back through the water cycle. So, we're at the stage where, and now we have the technology, we can filter that water before we drink it, before we bathe in it. And I think if you don't do that, you've got to question why not. And I'm really interested in the research side of this because I expect that there'll be relief from, and I know anecdotally, certainly people with psoriasis and eczema, if you just tell them to use a shower filter, sometimes their condition remarkably improves just from that one thing alone. And as you think about our gut bacteria, we're still learning about the importance of the bacteria on our skins and inside our bodies, which that's the wisdom of 4.5 billion years of evolution of life that is still carrying with us in the form of 90% of the DNA in our bodies is from these bacteria. And if we're assaulting them with chlorine every day, we're committing war on ourselves. Question about the portability. Yeah, the filter, even the whole house filter, you can then take that with the house when you go. You just then connect the pipe again, unscrew it, and you can take that to the next house. So they are portable. Will the filters go to landfill? I mean, I don't know if they can be recycled, but at least then you've concentrated the elements there. There's the flow rate statistic for the system. The whole house system will do 50 litres per minute, and it will do a total of 300,000 litres. So that's the whole house system. The under sink system, I think it was 25 litres a minute, and it will do 150,000 litres. So these are previously these polymers we only used for commercial applications. They're used really widely in Europe, but it's only in the last few years that they've become really commercially available and at a price point available to domestic householders. And as I say, I feel so fortunate and blessed. I was at the right place at the right time when this is coming, available in Australia, and to make it available to people, it just, gives me goosebumps almost that this is, the first product I've come out with, and it's so much about who I am and what I talk about and what I feel is important.
Well, I think it's also blessed for everyone else that you cross paths with the best water system, sort of currently available in terms of having your credibility. Dr. Marc behind this product just speaks volumes for everybody. And I think it gives everyone a sense of comfort because it can be a hard decision, which water filtering system do I buy for my house?
It's so complicated. It freaked me out. This is one of the things that I was really researching it myself. Which one do I get? And it's so, there are so many choices. And the thing is, the people who sell the filters, they want to give you the most options. But then you have to start making this cartridge and that cartridge and triple system and double system and flow rates and reverse osmosis versus, all these other systems. And it's really complicated. And that's, people are coming to me and saying, Mark, it's so complicated, help me. And this is my solution. And it just came at the right time. So yeah.
Yeah, and the price points are really quite incredible. I'll read those out for people who are on the line tonight. The whole house system, the opening special price is $2,212, which is, for a whole house system, it's amazing. And as Mark has said to you, these come in an incredible outer casing. And the whole sink system is $1,089, and the countertop system is $418. Certainly something that we were speaking about with Mark when the products were onboarding that I was really quite amazed is that both the whole house system and the whole sink system do have the ability to filter your hot water as well. A lot of systems don't necessarily do that, particularly when you're looking at that whole sink system, like something going under the sink. It's quite rare for it to tap and do both. And it's because of that water flow capability of this filter. So, that's something really important to note because there's not a lot of products on the market that can do that. And we're using hot water in so many places, washing up, showering and everything, as you said, Mark. And I'm excited to hear everybody's testimonies, once they change over their water systems. And I do, highly recommend if people are open to it to do that microbiome testing and become part of that study.
That's a citizen science campaign. And as far as I know, it's the first ever citizen science campaign, but this will be the first ever research to actually document the changes in the microbiome when you have chlorinated water versus filtered water.
Yeah, and so Mark, how do people? I've put on there the link where they buy it, but how do they register with you to become part of?
Well, what I'm offering is to do a 15-minute consultation with everyone who wants to do that. So I will. They can best to email me directly, and I'll set up a time to do a consultation with them. Then I'll give them a code that they can use with Microba, and Microba is the microbiome testing company. But I'll also send them I'll give them a link to a website that has a questionnaire that asks them about their health symptoms. And it goes through the frequency and severity of their health symptoms. Because we don't want to just document the change in their microbes. We want to document the change in their health.
Yeah.
So that's a research study that we'll be participating in. I think Nicole Bausma, who's founder of the building biology industry, she's going to be using that as part of her PhD. And the aim is to write that up in the scientific literature. So we're contributing to new knowledge. So this is not just, for fun for me. We want to have evidence-based wellness, and we want to really create new knowledge. So that's the intention of that research study.
Oh, that's amazing.
And just to reiterate that if you buy a whole house system for 2,212, 10% of that price will go to the Bathe the World Foundation to provide clean water to people in need.
That's right. So I want to say thank you, everyone, for being on this call tonight. Just absolutely mind-blowing information, and what a privilege to have Dr. Marc here himself talking about water. And for anyone who is interested to buy the water systems, please go back to the person who invited you on this webinar tonight. They might have done that through a social media post today, outreach to you personally, but I encourage you, please go back to that person, because there are a few more questions, no doubt, that you will have, and they will be able to assist you with that purchase. Now, once your purchase is made on the water system, we will make sure that, obviously your product and everything is sent out. You'll get sent an email from Inner Origin with links there, Mark's putting up there, which is great too, to be able to buy the microbiome testing with the Social Science Project. And then we'll have a calendar in there that you can liaise with Mark to book that incredible 15-minute consultation. And to let you know, that's just amazing value, because Mark does not consult anymore. He hasn't, Mark's not available for that because he's so incredibly busy. So this is really a one-time opportunity to have a consultation with Mark. And I think that's priceless, to be quite honest. So that's really amazing that you're doing that, Mark. And I know whoever takes up on that opportunity will get a lot out of that. So thank you again so much. You are an absolute wealth of knowledge. You are a blessing to the whole planet, and the work that you have done in your past and now bringing through to what we'd call, I guess, a more commercial world where you can continue to impact lives one by one is just absolutely magical. And we're so delighted that you've given Inner Origin the privilege of distributing these water systems with you. And
thank you, Sally Ann, for giving me the platform and the inspiration, and Therese, both to Therese and Sally Ann, for really being inspiring and giving me the platform and the impetus to actually be in the right place at the right time and be the channel and the vehicle that can have this happen. So yeah, thank you.